sun hung low over the horizon, washing the airport runway in a golden haze. The rhythmic hum of jet engines filled the air as passengers lined up, dragging their suitcases, their faces glowing with the quiet excitement of travel. Among them was Ava Mitchell, a 20-year-old aviation student from Seattle, the kind of girl who dreamed more about clouds and cockpits than city lights and nightclubs. This was supposed to be just another flight. Boeing 787 Flight 342 bound for London. Ava had taken her seat in 12A, a window view she always chose deliberately, so she could watch the wings slice through the sky. Her headphones played soft music, the world outside blurring into streaks of motion. She had no idea that in a few hours, every headline in the world would carry her name. The takeoff captain Reynolds and First Officer Diaz sat in the cockpit, running through their final pre-flight checklist. The Boeing 787's twin engines, Rolls-Royce Trent 1000s, purred with precision. Everything was perfect, cleared for takeoff. Flight 342, the tower's voice echoed through the radio. Copy that, Reynolds replied. As the aircraft accelerated down the runway, Ava pressed her head against the window, smiling as the earth fell away. The clouds opened up like gates of heaven. It was always magical, the moment the wheels left the ground. Around her, passengers relaxed. Some ordered coffee, some reclined their seats, and a few whispered about their plans in London. The crew moved gracefully through the aisles, calm and confident, the perfect image of control. 30 minutes later, the jet leveled off at 30,000 feet, cruising smoothly across the North Atlantic. Ava opened her flight manual, a small notebook she carried everywhere, and began sketching. The cockpit layout from memory. She didn't know that. What she was drawing would soon become her reality. The silence before the storm. 2 hours into the flight, turbulence began to nudge the plane. Just light bumps at first. A few passengers chuckled nervously. Others held onto their drinks. The captain's voice came on, reassuring and composed. Ladies and gentlemen, we're encountering a minor weather disturbance. Please remain seated. Ava looked out the window. The clouds below had turned darker, heavier. Lightning flickered in the distance, and faint but growing closer. Then it happened. A loud bang rattled the left side of the plane. The sound was so violent that every passenger froze. Cups tumbled, overhead bins rattled, and gasps filled the cabin. The plane lurched once, twice, and then steadied, but only for a moment. The left engine had failed. A thick column of smoke trailed from the wing. The flight attendants' faces went pale, but they moved quickly, trained, focused. In the cockpit, alarm screamed. Engine 1 failure. Power loss. Diaz shouted. Reynolds grabbed the controls. Trying restart sequence now. The hum of the right engine was the only thing keeping the aircraft alive. The captain's struggle inside the cockpit. Chaos unfolded in silence. The checklists that once felt routine now carried the weight of 201 lives. Hydraulics are stable, Diaz said, scanning instruments, but power's dropping. Emergency checklist. Go, Reynolds commanded. They went through procedure after procedure, restart, reroute, control reconfiguration, but nothing worked. The left engine was completely dead. To make matters worse, they were flying over open ocean, far from any emergency landing strip. Requesting immediate diversion, Reynolds radioed, but the static crackled back. Negative, Captain. Closest landing zone is still 180 miles out. The captain's hands trembled slightly. He'd been flying for 20 years, but this was different. Behind the cockpit door, Ava watched through the crack of the curtain, her heart pounding. She could tell from the crew's eyes. This wasn't minor turbulence anymore. The panic spreads. The cabin erupted in whispers, then cries. What happened? Are we crashing? Why is there smoke outside the window? A baby wailed somewhere in the back. The lights flickered and the plane dipped slightly to the left. Everyone, remain calm, the chief flight attendant called out, her voice trembling despite her training. Ava stood up. Miss, please take your seat, a steward said, but she didn't sit. Her eyes were fixed on the emergency panel by the cockpit. She recognized it from her training simulator. She could read the warning lights. And what she saw made her blood run cold. The captain wasn't just fighting an engine failure. He was losing control of the hydraulics. Moments from disaster. Inside the cockpit, Reynolds gripped the controls with white knuckles. Mayday, Mayday, I'm Flight 342 declaring emergency. Left engine failure, losing altitude. Copy Flight 342. Do you have control? Reynolds glanced at his co-pilot. Barely. Suddenly another jolt, stronger this time. The right engine sputtered, then stabilized again, but the aircraft tilted violently. Reynolds, we're dropping fast. Pull it up! Pull, and then, a sound that froze everyone's blood. The captain gasped, clutching his chest. Sir? Diaz shouted, panicked. Captain. Reynolds' vision blurred. Years of flying, countless takeoffs and landing, all flashing before his eyes. He tried to breathe, but the pain in his chest grew unbearable. He slumped forward. The captain had suffered a heart attack. The girl who stood up, panic swept the cockpit. The co-pilot tried to stabilize the jet, but his hands shook. I can't do this alone, he shouted to the crew rushing in. Ava heard the commotion. She rushed forward, ignoring the protests of the attendants. Let me in. Ma'am, you can't. I'm an aviation student. I know this aircraft model, she cried. The co-pilot looked back, desperation in his eyes. Then get in here. Ava stepped into the cockpit. For a second, everything stopped. The alarms, the chaos, the fear. It was just her, the controls, and the sky. Her hands trembled as she sat in the captain's seat. She had practiced this in simulators 100 times, but never like this, not with 200 souls behind her, not with lightning flashing through the windshield, not with her heart hammering in her chest. Okay, she whispered, steadying herself. Let's fly this bird home. To be continued in Part 2, The Descent of Courage. Ava takes control, communicates with ATC, faces an emergency landing, and becomes the hero who saved Flight 342. The cockpit was chaos. Flashing alarms, warning tones, red lights illuminating every surface. But amid the noise and panic, one thing stood still. Ava's determination. The 20-year-old aviation student sat in the captain's chair, her trembling hands hovering over the yoke. Her heart raced, but her eyes, sharp, focused, scanned the panels like she'd done hundreds of times in her simulator back home. The co-pilot, Diaz, wiped the sweat from his forehead. We've lost engine 1. Hydraulics are unstable. I'm rerouting emergency power. Ava nodded quickly. Right engine's still functional. If we can stabilize pitch, we can glide. Diaz looked at her, disbelief mixing with hope. You've flown a 787 before? Only in a simulator, she admitted. But the principles are the same. The struggle for control. The plane dipped again, sending screams echoing through the cabin. Outside, lightning cracked across the sky, illuminating the ocean below. Ava gripped the controls, pulling gently, trying to balance lift and drag. I need nose trim adjusted, manual override, she shouted. Diaz complied, switching the hydraulics to manual mode. The jet began to level, shaking violently but holding altitude. She could hear passengers crying behind the locked cockpit door. Every second, every vibration in the yoke reminded her. One wrong move and 211 lives would end in the Atlantic. Flight 342 to ATC, Diaz called, voice trembling, declaring full emergency. We have partial engine power and medical incapacitation of captain. Copy, Flight 342, came the response. You are cleared for immediate descent. Closest landing field, Shannon Airport, Ireland. Coordinates transmitting now, Ava exhaled. Okay, that's our shot. The voice of comm, she turned to Diaz. You handle comms. I'll take control. He hesitated. This was madness. But when he looked into her eyes, he saw something unshakable. A fire. Ava wrapped her fingers around the yoke. All right, big girl, she whispered to the plane. You're not dying today. Her voice came through the intercom, calm but firm. Ladies and gentlemen, this is Ava Mitchell. I'm assisting the flight crew. We are experiencing technical difficulties, but we are in control. Please remain seated and trust us. The words spread a strange peace through the cabin. Mothers held their children tighter. Passengers stopped screaming. Hope returned. Riding the storm as they neared the Atlantic corridor, the storm thickened. Rain lashed against the windshield like bullets. Wind shear pulled the plane side to side. Ava's knuckles turned white, but she kept her eyes forward. We'll descend to 12,000 feet. That'll get us under the turbulence band. Diaz looked out the window, sheer blackness. You sure? Trust me. She guided the 787 downward through the clouds, her every instinct firing. She remembered her instructor's voice from years ago. In chaos, don't fight the sky, dance with it. So she danced. Each correction, each turn, smooth, measured. The massive aircraft responded like it could sense her courage. At 12,000 feet, the turbulence eased. The storm began to thin, revealing glimpses of moonlit water below. "We've stabilized," Diaz whispered in awe. "The last 180 miles. The radio crackled again. "Flight 342, Shannon approach. You're cleared to land runway 06. Winds 15 knots crosswind. Fire and medical crew standing by." "Copy that," Ava replied, steady as steel. Diaz turned to her. "You know, landing this thing is completely different from a simulator." She smirked slightly. "Then it's time to find out what I'm really made of." She reviewed the landing checklist in her head, flaps, gear, spoilers. Her fingers danced over the controls, muscle memory from years of obsession. "Flaps 1, she said. "Flaps 1, Diaz repeated, gear down. The heavy thud of landing gear lowering filled the cabin, like the heartbeat of the plane itself. Seconds from impact, the runway lights came into view, a glowing strip in the darkness. But the winds were erratic. The plane shuddered violently as crosswinds slammed into the fuselage. "Speed 160 knots, Diaz called. "Too fast," Ava said, adjusting throttle carefully. "Come on, girl, hold steady." The ground rushed up beneath them. The alarms wailed one last time. "Too low! Terrain too low!" Ava held her breath, tilted slightly into the wind, and pulled. The Boeing 787's nose lifted, the wheels touched down, hard but safe. The aircraft screeched across the runway, sparks flying, but it stayed on course. "Reverse thrust," Diaz yelled. Ava hit the switch. The engines roared backward, slowing the massive jet, and then silence. The plane rolled to a stop. People burst into tears, clapping, hugging, praying. The crew unbuckled, still shaking. Diaz turned to her, eyes wet. "You just landed a Dreamliner, kid." Ava exhaled for the first time in what felt like forever. She looked out the window. Fire trucks and ambulances surrounded the plane, flashing red and blue lights illuminating the tarmac. The aftermath paramedics rushed aboard. The captain was alive, barely, stabilized and breathing thanks to quick medical response. The passengers were safe. Not a single life lost. News spread within hours. 20-year-old girl saves Boeing 787 after mid-air engine failure. Airlines, pilots and aviation schools around the world called her a hero. But Ava, she didn't see herself that way. When reporters surrounded her the next day, microphones flashing, she simply said, "I didn't save the plane. The plane saved me." It reminded me what courage really means, staying calm when everyone else loses hope. Epilogue. The sky remembers. A year later, Ava Mitchell stood on the same runway in Seattle, wearing her pilot uniform for the first time. The Boeing 787 gleamed in the morning sun, and as she walked toward it, her reflection shimmered across its nose cone. Her call sign now read, Captain Ava Mitchell. And every time she touched the yoke, she whispered the same words she spoke on that fateful night over the Atlantic. "Okay, big girl, let's fly."